Hello, and welcome to Return to the Fire with Wild Women, the podcast that seeks to reignite wisdom aligned with the regeneration of people and the planet. I'm your host, Kim Carfor, founder of the 501c3 nonprofit Wild Women, and I'm so glad that you joined us today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Return to the Fire with Wild Women. I'm your host, Kim Carfor, and today I'm super duper excited to invite Taylor Shanaye to have a conversation with us. So Tayla has a master's in psychological studies with a concentration in somatic counseling psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies. Her master's thesis focused on the ways environmental violence and racism perpetuate the embodied traumatization among marginalized communities. She has a PhD in women's spirituality with concentrations in Black feminist scholarship, spiritual activism, and ecofeminisms. Her doctoral research is focused on Black maternal liberation potential, potentiated by natural childbirth practices. She identifies as a bicultural Black femme, a mother, an artist, a neuroscience scholar, and an activist. Welcome, Tayla. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Kim. It's
Yes.
so good to see you and hear you.
It's so super special to be together. One thing from your bio on your website, which I invite all of the listeners to go peruse, I'll put a link in the show notes. But I love how you describe yourself. You have a very rich description of who you are and what you're doing on this planet and on the earth and in the land or with the land. Um, and so in your bio, you say, I offer my awareness to the land to learn from spirit as they speak through synchronicity and birdsong. I offer my awareness, the most precious thing I possess, to creation. And I just think that's such a beautiful and intentional way of orienting yourself in the world. So if you could just say a little bit about how that came to you or what that means to you, that would be a great place to start.
hmm Thanks for reading it. Hmm. Attention. Yeah. In, I would say in the past, really explicitly, right, the past 10, 12 years, but arguably a lifetime, um, my work with body, with nervous system, with nature, with consciousness, with other human beings, with land and water, um, has really been a kind of extended study and practice of understanding or making sense of what it is to have attention.
Mm,
Attention that can be directed, attention that can be intentional, qualities of awareness that actually mean something, have the potential to lay impact on another, whether that's a landscape, whether that's another body, whether that's another timeline, right? Whatever it is that I'm trying to orient toward that allows me to actually be more current, more present in the actual here and now.
mm,
And I remember having this experience several years ago. I was guest lecturing um, for a food class actually in Wisconsin, at the University of Wisconsin. And there was a young student there, and we were talking about food. And the student was having kind of like a hard time getting a thought out. And so I turned to them and I just said, "You have my full attention." And the student just stopped speaking and kind of got a little teary and then was just immediately like, "Oh, no one's ever said that to me before. Hang on a second." And then was able to talk about their relationship to food. And we were kind of unpacking some of this relationship. But I will never forget this moment of really what it was to offer my attention to someone and really make it very clear that they have all of it and what a profound impact that has had.
mm,
Um, and I've been following that thread in every form of relating, whether it's placing my attention on the birds, placing my attention on the wind, placing my attention on children, on fill in the blank. The more that I actually am in the deliberate care of my attention and um, the very intentional casting of it, on
Mm.
that which is created, that which is alive, and that which is able to be in reciprocity. Um, yeah, there's miracles available.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah.
What a beautiful story. That's so beautifully said, especially because I've often thought about this that consciousness is sacred, and I'll tell my theology students that, and sometimes they're like, "Oh, you're right." And we live in this attention economy where corporations are profiting off of our attention and they know exactly how to grab our attention. And so I think in that story, you demonstrate so well how this younger generation is feeling that in their own bodies and how violating that can be and how touching and may I use the word spiritual, but just touching it was to that individual that and how cheers to you for knowing what to say in that moment or knowing what it was that that student needed to hear or what would benefit that student in that time. And so, how did you know that that was, how could you tell that that was, you probably didn't tell, you're just a very intuitive relational being, but is it because you're paying attention to the attention economy and how everybody's profit or corporations are profiting off of our attention, or is it something that you've always been aligned with that consciousness is sacred and so it's a commitment of yours?
Well, I'd love to say it was forever, but I don't think so. No,
Mhm.
no. I certainly have, especially in in recent years, been really, really in the experience of what it is to have my attention hijacked
Oh,
and,
hijack is a good word. Yeah.
have it hijacked, have it controlled, have it directed,
Mm,
without my consent, and how that has very real physiologic, spiritual, and psychological consequences.
yeah.
The ways in which a body, like the immune system, right, the endocrine system, the way that our entire system really responds when there's a full hijack of our awareness.
Mm,
And we live in a culture where that, like you're saying, is the norm. Like there's a collective awareness, um, with those that know how to hijack attention, that it is ultimately the most precious thing any
yeah.
of us actually possesses.
Mm,
And if they can direct our attention, they have control of where our bodies go, how our bodies move, how our bodies breathe, how our bodies eat, how our bodies sleep,
yeah.
literally everything.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's been through somatic practice and kind of being deeper, more deeply, invested and kind of obsessed, arguably, with the nervous system, not just the human nervous system, but really seeing it as this ancient ecological sacred technology of
Mm,
communication that is the same as tree roots, as mycelium, as star systems, as birdsong, as
mm,
it's all the same firing across synapse, right? This all of these ways in which creation communicates over and over again through sensation and impulse.
mm, mm,
And as I've gotten more into my care of that and meeting it with other technologies of practice that allow me to really be fully invested with my own curiosity and wonder and awe, whether that's in nature connection, whether that's deep connection with other humans, whether that's deep spiritual practice or just like deep embodiment practice,
yeah.
whatever those things are, where it's like, oh, I have my attention and I'm gifting it, or I'm utilizing it in a way that, signals my availability
Mm,
for connection, for intensity, for, that kind of what is possible in the synapse, in the between of a synapse,
mm,
right? Happens what happens when something fires in between, the
mm,
song that happens between. Um, my sensitivity to the directing of my attention without my consent
mm,
has gotten I've gotten quite sensitive.
mhm.
Uh, I can feel it. I can actually feel it coming out of my face. I can feel the way that it's like, oh no, I've lost it. I gave all of my attention to the algorithm. I'll be back in 3 hours.
3 hours.
Wow. Right. And it's like, oh, I gave it up. It's
Yeah.
gone and it's not mine. And I have no control
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
And in that feeling, then what happens in my body as a consequence of that? What
Yeah.
happens to my sleep? What happens to the regularity of my eating? What happens to my relations,
Yeah.
my physical relations,
Yeah.
my material, my
Yeah.
mattering?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And people are feeling that collectively. And so as you were
absolutely.
talking about, the three, it takes 3 hours or, whatever time, people have the language, right? They call it doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Or if anybody goes to work and then that feeling afterwards of just, for me personally, I feel hungover if I'm on the computer for an extended period of time, but just for survival purposes, I have to normalize that as an academic, and other people do too for survival. And so this kind of goes into your area of expertise and research, which is how heteronormative patriarchy, I don't know the words that you use, but kind of perpetuates this traumatization and this disconnect with our bodies and our souls in that sense. So if you could say more about that in your area of research.
Yeah. So I've kind of got, a tangle of of research fascinations. Um, my focus in my master's program of somatic counseling psychology, I
Yeah.
was doing a lot of frontline work and particularly regarding water protection and just like deeply caring for the waters and showing up at prayer walks and really investing my energy into like caring for the people who are showing up for the water, like who cares for the helpers, right?
Yeah.
um, and really witnessing how both water protection is a trauma response and then how having to be inside of resistance movements perpetuates the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Like using, it's not lost on me as an example, the famous example of Standing Rock, where there are people praying for the water and then the water is being used against them and with the being sprayed by the fire hoses. And so
Oh, right.
right on the bridge. And so there's this way in which
Mm.
it comes this self-perpetuating cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and inside of that, then moving from there to like, okay, well, what is happening to our collective awareness? And can I find a place where it feels deeply obvious that this is where white supremacy, cis hetero patriarchy, exploitive capitalism, exploitation, and extractivism, um, human supremacy, where all of these things are getting enacted all at once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and I also became a mother around the same time that this question happened and realized, like, oh, the mother body is the place where all of those things happen at once.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And being a Black woman and pregnant, it was very clear that it was like, oh, this is where all of these things happen in one moment.
Mm. Mm.
And the mechanisms of control with through hypermedicalization of childbirth, when we look at the long history of childbirth, the entire practice of childbirth as a cultural practice, so not as an experience historically the world over, animal birth that happens over and over again with all
Mm-hmm.
animals that give live birth. But this very particular thing we call the American birth practice,
Mm.
or the US American birth practice, obstetrics and gynecology, um, are so deeply an enactment of the force of linear time, the force of power, particularly with its deep roots in white male doctors,
Yeah.
the erasure of spiritual significance, the erasure of the mother,
Mm.
um, the mechanisms of violence and technological control over
Mm-hmm.
a birthing body, um, were all just like so deeply obvious in navigating, not just like my experience, but really like, oh, let's take the lid off of what it means to become a person in this culture. And when
Yeah.
we look at birth and the amount of trauma that exists inside of birth and bifurcate out or delineate out traumatization enforced through mechanisms of control and trauma that happens due to unexpected loss, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to say that birth itself is natural birth is not inherently safe, or right, like people die,
Yeah.
people have died.
Yeah.
That is part of the meaning making around birth, is that it opens the portal where both options are possible. There's both ends of the spectrum of life, birth and death, available in one moment.
Right.
um so I'm not going to argue that like there's not a time and a place for medical intervention, there's not a time, I none of that, right? But when we can are able to kind of get a little bit of spaciousness between trying to control for death and control creation's processes, and
Mm,
look at the way that those controls actually proliferate patterns of disempowerment, patterns of exploitation, of extraction, of violence, of the enforcement of chronological time on natural processes, the kind of boxing in.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's pretty obvious that there's this enactment in which you are not born a human being, you are birthed a person.
Oh, interesting.
And inside of that, the mother or the birthing person, the gestational parent, is remade,
Hmm.
because it's also a major transformation for them.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so they're remade into the structures, definitions of what is appropriate for the person who has gestated and birthed a human
Right.
being. Yeah.
So when you said that the mother body was where all of these moments intersected and all of these categories or dynamics, I'm picturing the axis mundi, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual or mythological entity or concept where it's where the transcendent and the immanent kind of merge, and people say that with trees are an axis mundi, right? And so there's this emergence that's happening. Um, but then in your work, you've also said that that birth is an expanded state of consciousness. And so I want you to, if you could just dig into that a little bit, because I totally agree. And, while I don't have the concepts or the words for it, focusing on it in your PhD, I'd love to hear you speak more about that, because I see it as this opportunity, right? An opportunity of initiation, or I don't even think I like the word rite of passage, but seeing it as this opportunity to expand one's sense of self or relationality or connection to the cosmos. But the way that it's situated in America, at least, is that you just kind of fit into this, for lack of a better word, robotic or it's mechanistic, right? It's this mechanistic way of initiating the spirit world into the material world. So it's almost like sets us up for being like, this is what this culture is. Figure it out now, right? This, you're a semi-robotic. You got to fit into the algorithm at some point. But that initiatory process of the rite of passage from this liminal space or this non-being to being, there are ways that we could make that so much more spiritually potent. So if you could say a little bit about that in your work.
I think it, regardless of the cultural practice around it, it is spiritually potent.
Yeah.
That's the baseline truth of it. I think that the influence of technology, the influence of medicalization, the influence of money, of control, of time, the amount of control that it gets exercised on childbirth,
Mm-hmm.
is an actual indicator of
Mm,
how transformative, sacred, and spiritual it actually is.
that's a good point.
I think that the mechanisms of control are being leveraged because something so profound is happening,
Yeah.
something that we actually have no real like clue about.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty kind of otherworldly, the
Mm,
fact that we make more humans,
yeah.
um, that we just do this.
It's insane. Our bodies just do that.
They would just do that, and then they come out, and then that's it. Now there's another person on the planet,
And they just grow in you
and then just grow, and then they just,
naturally.
and it's fine, and you just eat a lot. It's like, right? What? Um, we don't understand. We don't understand when babies come out, because it's not up to us. The babies
Yeah.
decide when they come out, right?
Yep.
And so it is so intensely sacred that the mechanisms of control, I think, that are being exercised are just an indicator of that. And when I think about
Mm,
expanded states of consciousness, right, I'm thinking about things like trance dance. I'm thinking, of course, about things like psychedelics. I'm thinking about things like any spiritual practice that allows us to access the otherwise,
yeah.
all of which have been intensely controlled,
Mm,
been medicalized, been professionalized, been taken out of their indigenous roots, been taken out of the hands of the midwives, the shamans, the seers. They have been made crazy. They
yeah.
have been made superstitious. They have been made dirty. Then we professionalize this thing and sterilize it because it has to happen. People still need to come through these thresholds. We just want them to come through this door.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
We want
This
to we want to
portal.
dress the door.
Yep.
We want to dress the door.
There's this one door that you can go through, and it looks like this here.
And we're going to put this facade on it so that you come through it understanding your role in this very small blip of culture and human
Yeah.
experience.
Yep. Yep.
And yeah, so the profundity of it is like is is impossible. It's like nothing to argue. It is deeply entrenched in all of our everybody's experience.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that there is, yeah, when we're able to really say like, okay, well, what is actually happening? We can't, we have to look at like, oh, a baby is born, which is the cultural narrative. The cultural narrative is a baby is born.
Mm,
But the experience that is at the core of childbirth is for so many aspects of it, the birther,
mm,
undoing the birthing. And there's
mm,
an abysmal amount of research on the experience that somebody has while actually going through a childbirth process.
mm-hmm.
There's very little research asking, what do you see? What do you hear? How do you feel? What do you think? What comes through? What kind of transformation? What kind of information
Mm-hmm.
is available
Mm-hmm.
in that expanded state?
Mm-hmm.
And my curiosity around meeting that was really stemmed from um, reading a lot of like kind of natural childbirth birth books and getting deep into the realm of Ina May Gaskin and the kind of like
Yeah.
natural birth movement that emerged in the 60s that happened to emerge at the same time as the psychedelics renaissance and the environmental movement. So I think there's something happening there.
Yeah, right.
Natural
100%.
birth, natural healing, nature itself.
Yep.
And there was this thing that just kept coming up with a lot of Ina May's stories, which is one of the only repositories of deep stories of people giving birth and telling their story, was just like how far out and psychedelic the experience was.
Mm,
And so
hmm.
I got really curious of like, okay, well, what are the things that we define as an expanded state, and would these be applied to these experiences? And
Yeah.
so I really leaned on the studies of psychedelics because it's the most robust, because it's in the process of professionalization, it's in the process of medicalization. Um, we can see the overlap of how the sacred is trying to be stripped from it, with, you know, giving people the trip without the, like, the experience without the hallucination, the health without the hallucinations, quote unquote, right?
Right.
Taking out the shaman and replacing them with the MD.
Yeah.
No one
Yeah.
there to hold my hand. I'm gonna patent the iPad and the, or the eye cover and the earring
Right.
or the musics or whatever. And so there's these parallels of like, oh, something is here, something is important here,
Mm,
and we want that. We're going to have access to it, but we need to control how you get
yeah.
access to it.
Yeah.
And what I found in looking at the ways that they were able to break down, like, okay, what are the defining features of an expanded state in which transpersonal experiences are available, in
Mm-hmm.
which people are able to access a broader sense of self, where their spirituality is enacted, where their sense of belonging, their sense of connection with the divine, their sense of connection with themselves, with nature, are amplified.
Mm,
What are the changes of, and the changes are changes in our perception of sound, our perception of our visual perception, so auditory and visual perceptions, expanded sense of self, connection with the more than human world, connection across deeper timelines, all of which I had. And so my
mm,
research is actually just deeply looking at my own birth experience,
yeah.
way that animals showed up to show me how to push, the way that I heard different things, the way I was visited by different energies and different support beings that are non-visible in ordinary realms of consciousness.
Wow.
Uh, that enabled me to come through the portal, as well as birth a child.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
and the more conversations I've had, birth story circle shares that I've had, the more it's like, oh yeah, I've never actually told anybody, but
Yeah.
I heard this voice, or I saw this image, or I felt this energy at my back, but I was all alone, or fill in the blank.
Wow.
In which like it's very obvious that there was a portal opened and there was a deeply spiritual transpersonal experience that people were having that
Wow.
linked them to all of creation. And by that deep link, have a deeper understanding of their sense of self that allowed
Mm.
them to move with more surety about who they were,
Wow.
when they had non-traumatic, uh, or were able to recover from the trauma of their birth experiences if they had trauma in their birth experiences.
Wow. Ugh. Thank you for sharing that. That as someone
Mm.
who has not birthed a child into this world, I've heard some stories and I've imagined possibilities. And so this is really, I'm really grateful that you shared this and that you've also created the safe space to allow other women to share their stories with you as well, because it's all right there and talk about potentiality and opportunity. Um, these are almost untapped spaces that we could enter into and emerge from and create this new portal to bring life into this world. And so how did you get interested in natural childbirth and what did natural childbirth look like for you?
That's a great question. Um, the story has to start like way, way before, like in my mid 20s. And there was a period in my life where that was really dark. You know, I was in the midst of a very pretty severe mental health crisis. I was in process with an eating disorder. I was in process with substance abuse. I was in just like a very, yeah, extraordinarily dark place in my life.
Mm.
Um, and at that point, I'd kind of tried a lot of things to kind of figure out what was going on with my mental health and how was I gonna like navigate and get out of the mess that I felt like I was in. Um, and I just can like I can just visualize this. I lived in Los Angeles and I was working at a visual effects company and it was all super fun and wild for being 20 something and whatever. Um, and I just remember I walked past like a vitamin shop or something, you know, like a health food store, very Santa Monica. And I, and I went in and I was just like, I need something for like depression or something. I need something. And so they gave me just like three tinctures.
Hmm.
And I remember having them on my desk at work. And I got into the practice of taking them, and that just kind of like spurred me into my healing journey that then
Hmm.
like led me into yoga and then led me to like leave the job and leave LA and move to the North Bay, or excuse me, to the Bay Area and teach yoga 8 hours a day and um found CIS, and you know, here we are.
Yeah, totally.
And I am not like you know, I think that they're like the medical system is an incredibly important emergency response system to respond to medical emergencies. And through that process of kind of grappling with some of these darker demons and things that I was struggling with in my grief and my childhood trauma and just like really working through, I came to like feel less like an emergency
Mm.
myself. It kept feeling less like a liability, less like an emergency in myself, and like
Mm,
really learning how to take time with myself to care for things that hurt, to
mm,
care for things that scream, that are loud, that feel like they won't stop bleeding, metaphorically speaking, all of these different ways. And so I wanted to, when I got pregnant, I really wanted to like orient toward it as not a medical emergency. Where you're put on disability for for childbirth, the induction process, there's so many hookups and things like this in our medical system that really signal this is a medical emergency. Here's all the tests, here's all the
mm,
things, like you're gonna die, the babies could die, and like the leveraging of kind of vague threats that like, oh well, if you don't do this testing, then you're gonna hurt your baby, kind of feeling, and had
mm.
just kind of arrived in that I'm not a medical emergency. I'm
Yeah.
not in a medical emergency. I want to have the discernment so that I know if I actually am having one,
Mm,
I can respond appropriately. But I don't want to treat myself like a medical emergency anymore.
yeah. Wow.
I have to be in moving at the pace of care, moving at the
Yeah.
pace of love, moving at the pace of my nervous system,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
where I can actually bring my body along for every single decision that I'm in
Yeah.
process. And so for me, natural childbirth was really like, how do I grapple with all of like the internal structures that have made me not trust myself over my history? Can
Mm,
I surrender completely to this process?
mm-hmm,
Can I just be here for this
mm-hmm,
unfold?
mm-hmm,
And the birth of my son, it was 40 hours, and I did have an emergency medical transfer.
mm-hmm,
I labored at home for 30-ish hours before having to go to the hospital, and he was born in the hospital.
mm-hmm.
Um, Luckily, I'm very grateful I was able to like avoid any surgical intervention and was able to like bear him myself.
Yeah.
But I did hit a medical emergency situation
Mm,
and was able to trust that, like, okay, this is what is actually necessary for my body to do this.
right.
But still didn't treat myself as a medical emergency, didn't
Right
treat
on.
the situation as a medical
Yeah.
emergency. It's like, oh, I need medical assistance.
Yeah.
Um, and so for my orientation is just like a natural childbirth is the one in which as much of me is in the process as is possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I'm at consent and at choice.
Mm, back to the consent. Yeah.
Yeah, at consent and choice with how this is unfolding.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's
love,
not just that you like are off in the woods having your baby in the river. Like that. Bless you. That's cool. But I don't think that defines natural childbirth. Like
way to break the stereotype.
like a definition comes with like, am I consenting to what
Yeah.
feels like my whole body is saying, yes, that is the choice I want to make. I
Yeah.
am fully present for this. I am here and available for what I am deciding.
Yeah.
And that feels in alignment and in integrity with who I identify as and who I identify as who I will become on
Yeah.
the other side of this process.
I love the way that you describe this process because it's not creating these kind of dualistic categories of like, this is natural childbirth and this is unnatural, but the natural part is foregrounding you trusting yourself and not treating yourself initially as an emergency, which I think is a really important distinction, and that was really well articulated. And in that natural process, you're like, wow, I'm sure there was a moment you're like, my body's on fire, everything's saying go to the emergency room. And then so you're still trusting the process and not just saying this is natural and this is unnatural. It's still you're foregrounding your consent. And, you know, part of my work in Wild Women is to create spaces where women get to tap into some of those repressed dynamics of themselves where they get to foreground their voice, they get to tap into their body, and they get to strengthen this inner wisdom, which I think gets repressed in heteronormative patriarchy, um, because of just how, whether it's because of how we're birthed in this world or how we're trained to survive by just being cogs in the machine or going to work and not saying anything, or we're not even getting into the way that religion, Western forms of religion, just zip for by. That's for another podcast.
That's another
Um,
episode.
easy, you can find those. um, but this idea of really, foregrounding. intuition and women's ways of knowing and this type of rite of passage. I think you laid that out really, really elegantly. So.
Thank you.
And also, I really love your moment of connecting with plant medicine because I couldn't help but imagine. So you're looking at these tinctures and they become a part of your world, and then you ingest them. And part of plant medicine, I'm not super well versed. I'd love to welcome more people on the podcast who are more well versed in this, but they have energies, they have intelligence. There are living beings in these tinctures, and so those become conversation partners as your inner guides in this work.
Oh, absolutely. I think that there is this huge, like one of the biggest teachings I think that I've gathered in my personal healing journey has been what it is to develop relationship like wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things as someone who lives with chronic depression is that like depression's best friend is silence.
Mm,
It is isolation. It is that
wow.
way in which there's this just like I don't get to say, I don't get to be seen, and right there's this deep, deep requirement of isolation in order for the depression to do what it does so well, which
Mm,
is still.
yeah.
Still voice, stills the eyes, stills the tongue, stills the gut, stills everything. It just wants everything to freeze. And so at least that's my experience of it. And also, like how do I actually develop the capacity to be in conversation, to develop the capacity for relationship, for conversation, um, when sometimes when that pattern is so thick and because it's had to be essential for survival.
Yeah.
Uh, and plants and land and water have been and remain some of my biggest teachers in what it means to have meaningful conversation
Yeah.
and practice willing. I don't know.
Totally fine because it's still recording, so you can just kind of pick up where you left off. Totally just wasn't even a glitch. It just went off and then back on.
Hey, thanks, gremlins on the internet.
Yeah, they don't want this out there. They're trying to control it. Too powerful.
um, but yeah, like the way that place and the more than human can have been really essential, and willing participants, when I ask for that consent and am able to meet them in humility that they are living beings, and they
Yeah,
might not want to hear my trash. They might not care about my feelings today, but
totally.
when they do, they offer me that place to actually hear myself
Yeah.
and the things that are stuck and been rattling around and lodged in there. Um, and so at that time with like the tinctures and then learning, I moved into like the practice of, yeah, going and actually just being more intentional, finding places to go sit and be quiet in nature. So when I started actually speaking to trees out loud and like actually just like, hey, can I just share what's I'm struggling with?
Mm,
Um, and that has been like a major kind of like fulcrum point of change and direction in my inner world and inner working is how to actually develop and care for meaningful relations with
mhm.
all of creation,
Nice.
and that casting of attention and the feeling of attention of a place, of a tree, of a bird, of the water back on me, knowing that I'm also being seen and experienced and witnessed.
Mm,
And what is the dialogue? What is the exchange? What are you available for? Um, and yeah, like being in those textures of relations really allowed me to then recover my sense of place, not only in the more than human world, but really also reorganize that I have a place inside the human world. And I can actually like unsilence myself relationally in that
mm,
way, which for me personally is a lot harder. Um,
yeah.
Relating to humans is a very difficult thing.
Yeah.
Um, when I look at the long history of human activity since colonization on Turtle Island, like it makes very, very obvious sense that we wouldn't be very good at it.
Mm, mm, mm.
When we look at like what we call culture, what some people, like my teacher Resma Menachem, calls a trauma response that's lost its context.
Yes.
When we look at like the overstory,
Wow.
it's like, why would we think that being together would be easy? It's like been made to be inherently difficult.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that was really like a really critical part for me to be actually able to like re-enter into myself, was finding those companions and finding those plant allies, and those that I could develop relationship with that allowed me to, one, be incredibly honest and vulnerable, and also be impacted directly.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
So yeah, you do relational education, so it's almost like practicing this relational um, building mutually beneficial relationships with the natural world. And so you've spoken earlier about this tendency in ecopsychology, which I was so grateful that you verbalized, this tendency in the field of ecopsychology where we're kind of stuck at this, okay, yes, we awaken to going into nature as healing, but if I'm going into nature to heal my problems, then where is that consensual piece? Are we missing that consent? And are we still dumping on earth? Or so, in your experience, how have you built mutually beneficial relationships with the natural world? Because it does sound like it was a huge part of your healing process and healing journey, and return to self is having these conversations with these trees, which as you were speaking, I was imagining, oh yeah, because in certain cultures there were fairies that were part and parcel to the culture, but those myths had to be cut out for fear of I mean, for survival purposes, because colonizer mentality, it was, cutting out these pagan traditions or these local mythologies or traditional ecological knowledge, everything that was seen as, what the devil was, how they were orienting people. And the devil is literally just you tapping into intuition or body or the wisdom of women or the wisdom of earth or the wisdom of our ancestors or the wisdom of indigenous people rather than this top-down colonizer mentality. And so anything that had this emergent property was seen as threatening. And so back to your concept, what you were talking about, when something has that level of potency, that's when this kind of colonizer European dominator force comes in and either kind of shushes, stomps it out, or creates a new context for a very limited dimension or experience of this power to emerge. So I don't know if that's a question or anything. It's more just conversing.
I mean, but that's it really, right? It's like, oh, how like our recovery of belonging is
Mm,
so multifaceted and so deeply, like it's so deep. It's so many relations.
yeah,
It's so many contexts. It's so many forms of connection. It's so many possibilities. Um, and like the thing that I think dominator culture does really well is oversimplify, right? We have monoculture farms. Like
yeah.
we oversimplify. That's the definition, is just like let's get it all down to one. Let's get it all down to one. Let's make it all as simple as possible.
Mm,
But the principle of nature is to complexify
right.
and diversify. And I always think of like the ecotone or those edge zones or riparian zones in which only certain things thrive because it's the meeting place of two others.
Mm, mm,
And that's part of like my obsession with the nervous system as well, is like that when I get a sensation, when I get goosebumps because you say a thing, right? We're in that riparian juiciness of, oh, this is only possible because something came from one and arrived to the other.
yeah.
And now it lives here. It actually lives in my body. And it's that firing across synapse, whether it's across ecotones, whether it's across mycelium, tree roots, whether it's across bird song, you and I having conversation with this buttery butterfly flying behind you, coming in and going out. There's this way in which we're in a persistent dialogue, and that it's not ever just a simple you and me in this kind of narrowed, simplified way, but there's this complex way in which all of our life is constantly pulsing and interacting and giving feedback and responding over and over.
Yeah.
Um, and that is, um, in some ways, that like the unpredictability of that is, I think, what terrifies folks. It's like there's no way for you to know that the thing that you're going to say is going to be the thing that gives me chills, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Um, but inside of that, like, oh, something new wants to come, something more possible, something more connected, more complex
Yeah.
becomes available.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, these ways in which we can invest in our capacity for relationship and really dive deep into what it means to be in a, interspecies connection has been a really like such a guiding, ultimately a guiding force, in my day to day, in my life. Um, and what it, and living inside of lands that have been violated, lands that have been extracted from, lands that have experienced violence at the human hand or are experiencing violent contact with humans.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the kind of process of my understanding of ecotherapy is definitely the like, okay, well, we'll just go into nature and then nature will regulate you.
Right.
And sure, sometimes that's true. Absolutely. Like, and I hope that that remains to be reality. And that these places have been decimated, that
Yeah.
these places have been harmed, that these places that it, I often find myself wondering is like if I enter into a place where there has been, say, a clear cut, I feel like I can feel the land brace at my presence, as if I'm
Mm,
going to, because I'm in this human form, I can
yeah.
feel like we brace for your presence. Um, and so like there's this way in which it's like we understand, right, that human beings experience trauma largely relationally and that we heal relationally. Like that's a major kind of anchor point in trauma therapy, is like this happened relationally and we heal relationally. And so it just doesn't make sense to me that we would think that that only applies to human beings, but
Mm,
that like our healing with the land is a mutually developed process.
yeah.
And that in order for us to heal our trauma that is so deeply rooted in our like being stolen from the land being stolen from us, the land being violated and extracted from, the land of our bodies being violated and extracted from, there's a mutual trust building, there's a mutual relationship building, there's a mutual care process that needs to happen, and
Hmm.
places also have to recover,
Yeah.
um, not just from what has happened to them, but recover a sense of engagement with us,
Yeah.
um,
As trustworthy
as trustworthy.
sources. And
Yeah,
so, how do we prove that trustworthiness, I think,
it's
is
reminding
part of
me
our work.
it's part of our work. There's a so part of our care work here in northern Michigan is my spouse and I have 46 acres of land called We the Earth, that we are transitioning from an old hunting camp. It used to be a chicken farm for the logging operation that used to go down the river, over 100 years ago, abandoned, and we're transitioning it to a gathering grounds and like Rewilding Institute where we can have gatherings and do this work and be weird and talk about possibility and get our hands in the actual soil and
I love it.
drink wild water. And when we went out to like have a conversation with the land before we, you know, went all in to try to acquire it. And I just remember this very clear moment where I was just like, I was I've met the land many times, but I was just like, okay, this is my intention here. I want to come back here. I want to heal with you. I want to heal with the land. And I just heard very clearly this very ancient apathy of like, you do whatever you need to do. And this kind of indifference of like, I don't need your help. I don't need your help healing. And I could feel the long timeline. And I was like, you're
Yeah.
right. You don't need me. You definitely don't need me to heal. Right. You've got deep time on your side. You've existed well before I did, and you will exist after. Um, and I was like, okay, uh, great. I was really hoping for like, yes, that sounds,
Thank you
come
so
on,
much.
small human, let's do that together. And Lynn was like, whatever. I was like, okay, I guess we'll do that then. It doesn't care.
Ancient apathy is a
You should have a
perfect.
thing.
You're
I
like,
was
yeah,
like,
I've seen you like hundreds of thousands of years and multiple forms of you. You think you're different. Congratulations.
hey, honey.
Real cute, honey.
Yeah, okay, pat on the head, off we
Yep.
go. Um, And then last summer, so summer 2025, we lived out there and as a family, and we spent the entire year our season cleaning. So pulling out old barbed wire that had been embedded in trees and in the soil, digging TVs out of the hillside, digging tar out of the ground.
Wow.
Countless runs to the dump. We got an old logging machine that had trees growing through it. Pretty poetic. Off the property.
Wow.
Like a semi trailer get pulled off of the property. The cabin, unfortunately, will have to come down because it's in disrepair, but we don't have the capacity to take it down yet. And so I hand washed and painted the whole cabin because I wanted it to feel cared for. Um, and we just like, cut back the trees, pulled a lot of dead stuff out, and got, just like really deep, found feral asparagus and strawberries and recovered the garden beds and all of these different things, just like deeply loving the place as best as we could.
Yeah.
And in the fall, I was out there and it was late at night and I was with the stars and I was just like in my gratitude practice of like how it had held me through the summer and how changed I was feeling of what it is to like clean land and care for land. And I had said something along the lines, I'm so grateful for this healing. And I heard the trees whisper back, I didn't know that when you said that, that's what you
Mm. Oh,
meant. And this way in which it was like you wanted to heal with the land,
wow. Wow. We're in this together.
like together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not like use the land like lotion to like
Yeah.
use the lotion with my skin kind of thing. So
Use the what?
like lotion, I'm not going to use this to like heal me. I'm going to heal with this
Right.
cream, I'm
That's a
going
good
to like
metaphor.
participate. I'm going to participate and together we
Right.
might find more. Um,
Wow. Wow. I love
yeah.
that story. That's such a good story.
And that was like, that's been an anchor point for me in the last
Yeah.
year. It's like, right, this is what we need.
Yeah. This is eco psychology. This is
Yeah.
healing. This is
This is true participation.
participation. Yeah. This is rejuvenating those ties to the land is not just this concept, but an embodied practice. As you were talking, I've been getting these ideas. So I'm hoping that this isn't I can't even say it out loud. I'm like, it's not our final conversation. This is just a first conversation because as you were talking about these synapses, I'm like, yep, well, the audience doesn't know that I've had so many chills running up and down my body throughout this whole conversation. So new synapses are forming, and I hope that's the same for the audience. And I also hope that we can do more collaborative work.
I would love that very
Awesome.
much. Yeah,
Me too.
thank you for all that you pulled together and the voices that you weave and the spaces that you hold. It's just so deeply essential, and I'm glad to just be able to speak into your field and be part of the collective synapse that is our possibilities.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Well, this is the after reading Suzanne Simard, Finding the Mother Tree, it was this epiphany moment where, you're wandering around being like, how can I be effective in this world with the skill set that I have? And then that metaphor helped me be like, oh, I don't need to be any certain particular person, I can be a synapse to create new networks and pull different, seemingly separate communities and ideas and um, generate this more connected and healed world. So thank you for what you said. I really appreciate your time. Is there any last things you want to say to our audience before I let you go?
No, thanks for your attention. I
All right.
know how valuable it is, and yeah, for you to consent to hear us speak is quite a gift. So,
Yeah, likewise. Well, thank you so much for your time and your sacred attention, and thanks to the audience members for yours as well. Take care, and until the next time, be wild and be well, everyone. Bye bye. This podcast has been brought to you in collaboration with the Luce Foundation, the American Academy of Religion, and the Wild Women nonprofit. Thanks so much for joining us. Please follow us so you can keep returning to the fire. And in the meantime, be wild and be well.